You have to eat enough calories and consume enough protein on those 5 days. Otherwise, you will create a plateau. And because 48 hours is a huge caloric restriction. With PCOS, like we fix PCOS literally the same way, because at the end of the day, it's a deep amount of insulin resistance. It's a deep amount of inflammation. It just means you've developed this condition that's an additional barrier now, that your body's going to be more resistant towards the healing, but nothing changes. I want you guys to have cheat meals. I want you guys to have some junk food, like whatever that looks like to you, whatever that is. 10%, eat whatever you want. And so I certainly want you to have some of that. So weight loss plateau, we definitely do not want to override that. You've been actively losing weight already the past several weeks, right?
Yeah, it's funny because when I first started following you and I started learning, I thought I might have been in a weight loss plateau, because before I started doing anything seriously, like I really wasn't eating a lot. You know what I mean? So I learned that, oh, I could be actually gaining weight or not losing weight because I'm not eating enough. So then
Right.
I started the meds, and which makes I was my biggest problem was having a hard time eating. So I was nervous that was the case, but I'm losing. So that says that I'm not.
You could have been under eating and you're still losing, but technically getting really technical. But the fact that you're losing and it's in the range what we want, which is 1 to 1.5% of your total, then you're fine. But still do those things that we teach you to prevent it, right? Like making
Right.
sure you're eating enough on the non-fasting days is
Yeah.
how you
I feel
prevent
like
it from.
that's like my biggest focus is the trying to eat enough.
I cannot stress that enough. All the rap that you see, all the bad shit that you guys see about these medications are because people are under eating, they're not exercising, they're not doing all this other stuff. But you do all this other stuff that I teach you guys with these meds. These meds are freaking amazing. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, people are getting the attention and coaching and direction that they need. A swift kick in the ass is part of what people need, as well as the what to do.
Yeah, it's cool in the sense that I don't know if I'm someone who had severe food struggle with severe food chatter or anything like that, but when you have that not wanting to eat, you're not in that famish. Oh my God, give me whatever, and craving as much, right? I guess you have more of that time to let me make a good choice.
Yep. Yep. And that's the key. That's the key. The whole conversation about whether this should only be used by obese people. I'm actually probably mid starting to slowly evolve towards being even more so, because of how detrimental we know the development of insulin resistance and poor metabolic health is, which happens well before obesity. That I'm starting to evolve towards, I think everybody should have access to these even sooner. And I was already on a good side of that spectrum. But anyways, as I evolve and learn more things, I'll teach you guys in the private groups. But basically, long story short, just more and more data coming in about how just amazing the health benefits that we're seeing. But anyways, yeah, Blair, you're rocking and rolling. So there's no discussion that we need to have with you for any sort of reset. So you're good.
But
Okay.
real quick question before you move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
The good thing that I did, and I should do better about it, but how when you start off with someone and they have to do that, if they're in that plateau, to do that reset, like the whole of the calorie counting, and I know like your whole position on it, but if we're not like accustomed to it, you do still suggest we really should know our portions and our calories and kind of things like that, have some kind of idea.
If you've never counted calories and you don't have to do a reset in my program, that's where the calorie counting experiment, I strongly urge you to still do 3 to 4 weeks of counting your calories, because you develop a calorie counting intuition. You do develop this intuition, which is a nice skill in the future to be able to just spot super dense foods and make better estimates. That's all it is. Sometimes you just need to know this plate in front of you, is this in the range of 3,000 to 4,000, 2,000 to 3,000, or 800 to say. You don't have to be that crazy accurate, but when you have no skill at all, you might wolf down a hell of a lot more than you had any clue to, because you never learned this into it. So it's a powerful skill.
And a
Okay.
plateau is considered not losing for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and again, these are estimates that apply to most people, but basically not losing for 2 weeks, a dramatic trend where it basically goes from a nice, solid, consistent 1.5% or 1% down to 0.25. If you were still at 0.25, but it was such a dramatic drop, I would consider that an indication of, let's not wait for it to get to zero. Let's fix it now. So any sort of dramatic drop or complete stop 2 weeks in a row. Because 1 week, you just don't have enough data to actually know so many reasons. You could have just messed up on your weigh-in.
I had a week like that.
Yeah. And sometimes if you have a bunch of carbs, just so you guys know, when you eat a bunch of carbs the day before you weigh in, you carry more water weight. So that's why try to be as consistent as possible with your weigh-ins is so important. Okay. You're dealing with PCOS, insulin resistance. We fix PCOS literally the same way, because at the end of the day, it's a deep amount of insulin resistance. It's a deep amount of inflammation. It just means you've developed this condition that's an additional barrier now, that your body's going to be more resistant towards the healing, but nothing changes. This is the best thing we can do for that. Just so you know, I have a lot of women that resolve, or they get a lot better with their PCOS. So you have not been on any other GLP-1s yet, correct? That's what I'm seeing here.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right. So have you been doing any changes in your diet, reducing calories, exercising in the past 2 to 4 weeks?
No.
Okay. So no reason to think you're in a plateau, sounds like.
Yeah. No.
Do you, what was that?
I definitely wouldn't think so. I don't restrict.
Yeah,
Like I could
no.
probably come down quite a bit on calories.
Yeah, a lot of people are like, no, Dr. Jones, I know I'm not in a plateau because the way I've been eating. So I know, and look, I get it. It's important to know because we don't want to do a reset if we don't have to. Have you ever counted calories before?
Yes.
Okay. So then if you feel comfortable that you have that intuition that we're talking about, then great. Start the program just like Blair. And then we're going to keep talking about what that means. So, and Nick, I know we chatted last week, but I don't think we got into this yet. I don't see that you've been taking any of these meds before, correct?
The first time, yeah. I'm on my third shot.
Yeah.
I've been on this 3 weeks.
3 weeks now. And you've been losing week by week, correct?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Nothing drastic, but I'm happy with it. Like 6 pounds.
6 pounds in 3 weeks?
Yeah. This is the third. If this is the third week, yeah, I think 6 pounds. Yeah.
Yeah, as long as if it's within that range of 1 to 1.5%, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
And you're still at the starter dose. Now, remember, guys, I say starter dose, but if you can make the starter dose work the entire time, then stay at the starter dose. There's no reason to willy-nilly increase your medication, because then that just makes it harder for us to wean off. After about 4 weeks, you're doing 48-hour fasting per week. We should be seeing about 1% to 1.5% of body weight loss per week. That's the goal. That's the target. Individual nuances for sure, person to person, but that's the general target. Fantastic. This is the first time I've had. Yes.
I'm sorry. So
you're good.
Just to reiterate that, if you feel comfortable and you're losing the right amount and you're good, you don't have to increase your dose. Stay with your dose after week 4.
Correct. And
what about any skipping weeks? Don't do that in the beginning?
Is there going to be harm necessarily from skipping weeks? No, because you're not a diabetic doing this to manage your blood sugar, right? So the only harm is your weight loss will slow down. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay.
So other than you getting slower results, no, slower healing, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely probably cut my calories down. That's a big part of it because I'm just not as hungry. Same thing, forcing myself to eating a little healthier, definitely healthier. Working out. I feel good. I feel good working out. I thought I was going to lose energy and that would affect it, but no, I actually feel pretty good.
That's one of the amazing perks of this med. So definitely enjoy it. And now we're going to talk about fasting here in a second, but the goal is to get you to the point where you're fasting for 48 hours. So I'm going to say it now. Once you're there, that's 2 whole days out of 7. So that's 5 more days. You have to eat enough calories and consume enough protein on those 5 days. Otherwise, you will create a plateau. And because 48 hours is a huge caloric restriction. But the reason why we don't plateau in the FLOA protocol nearly as much as people out there who are barely, because a 2-day fast is like a 4,000 calorie deficit. Other people might be in a 500 calorie deficit, but the reason why they plateau is because that's a continuous day and day over and over signal to the brain. And that signal is calorie deficit. It's a trend. And it's the trend that triggers the response to say, I gotta slow this down. Because if I keep losing weight, we're going to die. And we dial it down. So 2 days, it's an extreme amount of fat loss and a shock and all the benefits, but it's only 2 days. So you see how that's like the science. This is what there's no research on this. I came up with this for 2 decades of doing this, but observing why patients don't go into plateaus as long as they follow that one cardinal rule, which is consume enough protein and, more importantly, overall calories on those 5 days. I would rather you overshoot it and overeat on those days because you just burned 4,000 calories in 2 days. I'm not worried about the other days, which to me is another perk of the program. And why it's so awesome is because you don't have to count calories. Just get that fast in and eat basically almost as much as you want in those 5 days, and you're going to do good, which is awesome.
We were talking about on those other days that you're not long fasting, getting enough calories and protein. And there's that coming out of the fast that you have to be careful with. But when I'm trying to eat enough, obviously I want to do the most healthy, the protein, but would you recommend something not as good to hit that calorie? Or
you mean if you're struggling to get enough calories in those days?
Yeah.
So I want you guys to have cheat meals. I want you guys to have some junk food, like whatever that looks like to you, whatever that is, 10%, eat whatever you want. And so I certainly want you to have some of that, but I wouldn't go past that for the sake of hitting your calories. There's definitely, there's better ways to keep it healthy and get your food in. Superfood shakes. You've heard me talk about that. You can blend heavy foods. You can get a lot of nuts, healthy nuts, an entire avocado. You can hit your calories if you just know those dense fatty foods, easy to hit.
Okay. And then eating times, obviously, like you don't want to be eating late, but sometimes it's better to get it in than to not.
So if you're left in a situation where you're like, okay, either I need to go to bed being severely under calorie today or eat closer to bed. That's a situation that is going to probably present itself time to time. And you're going to have to make a judgment call based off of how you've learned your body, how it's doing, right? If you're in already a state of a plateau, right? Then definitely eat, because in that situation, it's much worse, right?
Okay.
But an occasional night where things are going fine and weight loss is humming and you accidentally forgot to eat one day, it's not the end of the world. I probably wouldn't eat. So I would make a judgment call based off of how it might affect you given where you're at, right? And I think being in a reset already or being at the start of a plateau would be for sure times, examples that I can think of where you definitely don't want to undereat even more. So the food before bed thing is interesting. I still advocate 3 hours to stop eating. It's tough. I know.
Thing is, I used to eat throughout the night too. I'd wake up and eat, and I'm not doing that anymore.
Good. Yeah. We want that daily fasting period. Then we want to get adequate protein when we're not fasting. Protein powder is, since we're on the topic of food, your target for protein per day is in grams, your target weight between your target weight and your current weight. So if you weigh 200 pounds and your target weight is 160, then somewhere between 160 and 200 is a good protein goal.
I have a couple of questions on the fasting.
Yes.
So it looked like for women, maybe there was like a different fasting protocol you wanted us to follow.
Great question. So I have a whole video on fasting for women. It's not a different protocol. It's a different rule. It's an extra rule that women have to be aware of that it doesn't apply to men. And we're only talking about non-postmenopausal women. Postmenopausal women fall into the same category. You guys look far too young for that, so I'm just mentioning that. But so all the other women have this extra rule where you should know day 13 to 15 and day 18 to 28 of your cycle, that if a long fast makes you feel like shit and you just like, why do I feel so hard? Like, why is this one so much harder than last time? Last time went smoothly. And you look at your cycle and you're like, oh yeah. Now, because, and Mindy Pels is the one that really brought this, I think, more into fruition. My women that are doing this program are also taking AOD usually, or some sort of fat mobilizing agent. And so a lot of the women that I've noticed, they don't have the issue nearly as much as the way Dr. Pels talks about. And so that's why I'm saying to you, pay attention to it. And if it comes up and you identify it's during those times now, and if it's day 13 to 15, that's such a small window, you can just do your fast earlier or later if you can. Day 18 to 28, it's such a long range, you might just have to skip that week's long fast.
So day 13 to 15 is like that critical time not to fast?
Day 13 to 15 and day 18 to 28 are windows where fasting may be an issue.
Okay.
All right. If you feel fine, you're like, I fasted during that time and I felt fine, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll know if it's an issue because it's not just fasting, it's anything that produces cortisol during those windows will derail a woman potentially. So there's plenty of other things that spike cortisol much more than a 48-hour fast. A huge argument, a stressful event, any of those things will spike cortisol and really screw you up. In that video, I'm rushing through it because that video will definitely go into more detail for you. So I would definitely watch that.
Okay. And then the only other question on the fasting is, so if you're borderline hypoglycemic, what's the kind of tips for making it through a fast like that?
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of hypoglycemia are we talking about here. Do you have any background information behind your hypoglycemia? Like
I
why
don't,
you have?
just like I've been told that numerous times with blood work from doctors, and then it's just I'll get like super shaky or whatever when it's been like a long period of time. I don't know if the meds like help with that or
Technically, they'll lower your blood sugar more. That's what these meds do. They lower blood sugar levels, generally speaking. If you already know you've had issues with low blood sugar in the past and you're not diabetic, either way, I would still get yourself a blood sugar monitor and start checking your blood sugar more often because you need to start learning what blood sugar levels feel like for you at certain ranges during the healthy range, during a slightly low range, during a lower range, because that way you can just give yourself an extra insurance card of being safer. And the fact that you have low blood sugar is an issue. And there's many causes of that. And quite frankly, you'd have to work with a functional doctor to try to figure out why that is. A lot of the things that we're doing with this protocol will help fix that, but it might be a slower process for you to get into the deeper fasting. You're going to have, and that's why I'm saying test your blood sugar and more often, especially during the fast, so you can start seeing and paying more attention to that. So every now and then I have somebody with an issue where we can't even do much fasting for the first couple of weeks. And instead we focus on the keto diet because going real keto gives you some of the fasting benefits, just not as strong. But doing that for a month could be a really good transition to start the fasting. And then you start the fasting. But I doubt you're not going to be able to do at least intermittent. All right, we've evolved into food there already, so we'll just wrap up food. We talked about the protein. We talked about eating enough in general when you're not fasting. What we're eating is actually very simple, right? I could call it the anti-processed food diet. I don't really care what you eat. We just want to be 90% away from processed food. So Paleo Mediterranean are just examples that represent lack of processed foods. But there's probably a lot of foreign foods that I'm not familiar with that don't fall in those categories. So I'm not saying it has to be Paleo Mediterranean. We just want to keep 90% of whatever you eat to be unprocessed, right? So that's your fruits, vegetables, and produce and meat, right? Dairy, if you can tolerate it, which a lot of people can't nowadays. If it works in the budget, organic, high quality organic produce and high quality meat is always favorable, but I'm not going to say it's a requirement. You're just going to have to look at your budget and see what you can afford. But there's plenty of data, and I'm convinced that the cleaner the food is, the better healing it can provide. So just work with that as well as you can around your budget. And then the only modification we're going to do for the first couple of months, even if you are fasting, is I still want you to go keto, right? So keto for a couple of months, and then about 2 months later, if the weight loss is going smooth and there's no issues, then we can start reintroducing carbs. And if the weight keeps coming off as you started reintroducing carbs, great. If the weight starts coming back after we start introducing carbs, then we just do another 2 months of keto and go back and forth until we can get to the point where we can keep losing while we have a lifestyle that has carbs. And how awesome is that? How sustainable is that? If I can have carbs and still lose weight, that's one of the things that no one likes to talk about during the weight loss program. A lot of times they create this scenario that's not sustainable, which is why everybody struggles with lasting weight loss. So I'm trying to get you guys empowered so much from the get-go so that it's actually a reality for you on the other end when you do lose the weight, because these drugs are going to help you lose weight. That's what they do. But all the other crap I'm having you do is so that it's lasting, just so you guys know. If you ever find yourself going, why am I doing all this extra work? It's because it's lasting weight loss, not just short term that you want. Plus all the health benefits I think are a big deal too.